Milan has one of these great little airports. It's like your airplane seat is just seconds away from this vintage tram, and you're riding down the street listening to a guy playing accordion, and everyone around you is just a little bit more stylish than the city you came from. There's a lot of glasses which are thick-rimmed in like just a really cool way. I want to connect to the world that all of this demographics is operating in, the people, the policy, and I want to start to think about these things a little more pragmatically. I want to look at the policy and like the real world. And, you know, Milan's an amazing place to do this. Not only is it the home of Bocconi University, which happens to be the headquarters of the Futurist project with whom I'm working on this podcast, it's also just the kind of place where you show up and you take a walk, and minutes later you're in front of what seems to be a really cool little wine bar full of people who are young relative to yourself and are extremely happy to chat with you on a podcast. In this episode, I'm going to talk to a researcher who also spends a lot of time talking to policymakers. A woman who gets the call every time the Italian press is alerted to the fact that they're having less babies every year. And a health economist who's considering what the real numbers are in terms of caring for the health of our society. But we're going to start at the wine bar, chatting with a wonderful woman named Valentina.
So I think that I'm doing amazing with my life at this moment. Okay. But it's also like kind of a turning point. I hear friends speaking about thinking of freezing their eggs. Yeah. You know, does it make sense? Yes. Okay. At this point for me is just the reason why I would choose to have them. Maybe it's a little bit selfish, and it's to have someone who can take care of me when I will be really old. I mean, I've seen my grandmother passing away a couple of weeks ago, and I've seen how could I support my father in this whole process. So her kid took care of her, and I took care of my father's feeling in the moment that she passed away. You know?
And how did your dad find time to take care of her?
Oh, he's unemployed at the moment, so that was pretty easy for him.
I'm Daniel Stern, and this is episode 2 of Certain Futures. My one day in Milan was packed full of interviews with the experts who I'd flown there to speak with. So I really only had one evening to get all of the street conversations I wanted to collect, and it was about to rain, and I didn't think it was going to happen. But it turns out that the streets of Milan are either 100% full of people who are ready to talk about demographic issues, or I just got kind of lucky.
My name is Paolo. I'm Italian. We are in Milan, and we live in Milan. We are very, very happy to live in a shit of city.
It's really, and that's fantastic.
Excuse me.
Not happy because live in Milan is still a joke.
Yeah, no, I got it. It's funny. And do you work?
I work. I'm an engineer.
When do you think you'll retire? Stop working? I'll use the machine to translate.
Pensione?
Yeah.
10 more, 10, 15. No.
Well, do you expect that your pensione is good?
No, in Italy, pensione. little. No, pensione in Italy is very, very, very little.
Cessi è presso cura di tuo
my
padre.
father died 10 years ago. And
I'm sorry.
here work all life.
You have one son or?
5 sons.
You have 5 sons, okay. your pensione for them, is that also realistic?
Anche loro secondo te andranno a 75 anni
No.
di pensione?
No, no, no.
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 Definitely no.
No. No.
What is your biggest worry for the future?
Qual è la tua più grande preoccupazione per il futuro?
I live for today.
When I finish speaking to Paolo, the trickle of rain turns into a torrential downpour that lasts through the night and into the morning. It's so bad that it looks like I might have to record my interviews remotely from my hotel room, even though I have flown to Milan to meet in person with these people. But it does let up eventually, and I go to meet with Arnie, one of the leaders of the Future As project. He's at home with his 2 kids, and I learn a great tip. If you get yourself an air fryer, a teenage boy can basically feed themselves, and you'll hear the clinking clack of that air fryer in the background during this interview. All right. Oh, the coffee's good. Thank you.
That's good. That's good. That's good. My name is Arnstein Aassve. I'm a professor of demography at Bocconi University here in Milano, in Italy. I'm Norwegian, and I lived here since 2007.
I did a study of exactly 3 people last night. I met one man. He's expecting to work until 75.
So, there we start to touch on a certain demographic issues that is, let's say, I don't know if I should use the word plaguing the country or not.
What's your hesitancy to use the word plaguing?
Well, I mean, that sounds a little bit dramatic. But of course, I think Italians are pretty aware of the demographic realities that we find in this country, because it's been in the news for a long time, the very low fertility rates, and that has its consequences.
Right.
And one consequence is, of course, that many people might have to work longer, and then so you get this worry that the whole system is kind of rigged against these young people. And the worry is that, okay, my generation, X generation, and the boomers are going to run away with the cake.
Yeah.
Now, the other concern about this is inheritocracy. So, how important it is for your own well-being, being a young person today, about how much wealth your parents have, right? Because you're going to inherit, or you're going to get support by your parents. So this demographic shift we are seeing might also be a source of greater social differences between people. And, I'm going to be totally transparent here. I have already opened up a pension savings scheme for my kids.
Right.
Why do I do that? Well, because I do worry that the public pension system is not going to be very generous in the future. So there you have it. It's interesting to see the decline in fertility rates in the Nordic countries. Nordic countries always hailed as a success story. So you kind of thought, wow, they did it. They hacked it. Then, but then the fertility rates since 2010 started to go down rather steadily. And I met people at conferences and so on, and I said, what's happening in the Nordic countries? Things worked until a certain stage, but, things change. And then you have to change the policies as well. And I think this is at heart of this project that we are running, this idea of resilience.
Right.
Because being resilient also means that you need to be able to cope with the fact that life changes for people, but societies change as well.
Like there was this crazy rainstorm all morning here, and you say, well, this is unusual. So, for now.
And you didn't bring your umbrella.
I did pack my umbrella. I was so proud of myself. I didn't use it, though. You sometimes have, I guess, irrational actors within your models.
Yeah.
But, how does resilience, which is like a buzzword, translate into anything helpful for anyone?
Yeah. So resilience is indeed a buzzword, and people have very different sort of ideas and opinions about what it actually means. And because everyone talked about it, it became so vague, and therefore it lost a little bit of its power.
Right.
So one of the things that we've been trying to think about is, okay, what does resilience really mean? Well, how should we think about it for people?
Okay.
But not only, how should it also work for societies? All right. Did we predict COVID? No. to vast majority of the population, it came out of the blue. We don't know what the next shock is going to be. Okay, in Nordic countries now, every household is asked to make sure they have 1 week supply of clean water and a bit of tinned food, just in case. But resilience is a bit more basic in the sense that let's try to give these people capacities to overcome whatever comes their way, right? AI wasn't there and suddenly is changing our lives very, very fast.
Yeah.
And the danger is that you try to design a new welfare state for the next 20 years, but you just might be wrong.
For me, one of the silver linings of the COVID pandemic was all of a sudden you saw very slow-moving governments doing things very quickly.
Yeah.
And in very pragmatic ways.
Yeah. Perhaps one of the biggest misconceptions about resilience is that we need to cope with a shock in order to get back to where we were. But that's not inherent in this concept. So going back to normal, it has to be a new normal. It's not said that there is only one steady state equilibrium that we're always going to seek to get back to. It just isn't.
Resilience means find the new normal.
Yeah. And here comes in a very important part, and that is that resilience is not necessarily something positive.
Resilience is not necessarily something positive. Okay, now this is a plot twist.
This is important. There are cases where psychopathic people actually score incredibly high on any kind of resilience scale. But being a psychopath is not something it's not something positive, right? Certain very highly unequal countries score very highly on the resilience scale. One example is United States. Whatever kind of measures you try to put in there for resilience, it scores very high, right? So when you talk about resilience, you need to be prepared to go on a new path, right? Mm-hmm. Secondly, you need to be very clear about the values, about what are important for people, for your citizens, because these are the deep characteristics of the society that you want to maintain, to have equal opportunities, freedom of speech.
Rich cultural expression.
Absolutely. Maybe Russia, you could even imagine that they turned around their society, Okay, it didn't go so well for them in the invasion of Ukraine, but they adapted. So you could even argue that they have been resilient. But of course, from our point of view, this is not a particularly good thing.
Right. Resilience isn't an outcome in and of itself.
Exactly. So you cannot basically say, okay, we're just going to try to make societies more resilient, and therefore, by corollary, everything is going to be good. So then, what are the things that really matters here? Education matters, and community, social networks, friends, colleagues. The bigger network you have, the easier it is to cope with any kind of problems that comes your way. Makes sense, no? That's very important to keep in mind.
Our interview ends, and Arnie lets me know that the true superstar demographer of his family is his wife, Letizia. And he brings me over to her office so that I can sit down and chat with her for a while.
So I'm Letizia Mencarini. I'm a demographer. I'm full professor of demography at Bocconi University.
So you're pulling something up here
on
the computer.
On my mind this data, that in 1951 in Italy there were 482 people over 100 years old.
Okay.
In 2023 there were 20,445, and the forecast are that in 2050 there will be 60,500 people above 100 years old.
Right.
Now, if we look our population structure, there are those who say that it's like an atomic bomb, because there is this bulge up, and then the lower part is so thin.
Oh, okay, a mushroom.
A mushroom.
A mushroom shape.
A mushroom shape that is not nice at all. So this mushroom shape eventually should go away, but with which cost for those generations who passed on. And I'm not only concerned about the elderly, I'm much more concerned about the young people.
That's amazing. Why?
because this new generation will have to pay the cost and the burden of this bulge without having done anything. For instance, in Italy, just to take an example, now there are 7 million below 15 years. There will be 6 million in 10 years. So the future are young people. They are few, and they need to be cared of in an incredible way. I don't know, when a resource became scarce, it should be more precious, so you should invest more on them. And this is not what I see in our society. I see that young people, they have difficulties to enter in the job market, they are not paid enough, they don't have security. In Italy, there is still an enormous dropout from school. Now we have less and less young people, so we need to treat them very well, because they will maintain us and will sustain the society in the future.
Most people I've been speaking to, very focused on Europe. You know, they'll point to Japan or Korea as an extreme example of this or that, or they'll look at Africa and say, well, here's where the growth is happening. So is there a different discussion happening in world demography?
Yeah, sure. In 1800, we were 1 billion. So now the rate of the growth is decreasing, but we are still increasing in the total number of the world. And I think this is something that is an issue for the environment for some part of the world. The other characteristic that we have never been so disequal. I mean, EU, it will be soon 6% of the total population in the world. How can we think to be Eurocentric? This is not justified anymore. We need to be humble and understand that we are small compared to the rest of the world. So I've worked also in some NGOs in the past and in development. And I couldn't foresee this moment where all the funds were cut. I think there is really a sort of middle age, medieval.
Okay. So we're entering not just like middle age population wise in terms of,
no, it's
but
really
also medieval.
Medieval. And actually, I'm really overwhelmed by these new trends of cutting funds. There was a program running since 1960 called Development and Health Surveys. It was funded by USAID. It was in all development country collecting data about children, contraception, fertility, health for families. And suddenly people was fired. The whole program after 50 years was shut down. And the data are not available, even the old one in the internet anymore. A student of mine came and said, I don't find the data. And I said, this is really, not a good student, not even able to find. Then I went there and there was a red mark. The data are not available anymore. I said, what? I couldn't believe it.
That's one of the first things someone taught me about demography is that it's sort of a non-destructive science in that the data you've had since the dawn of it is still useful. That is really heartbreaking.
It is heartbreaking.
Is there anything that you didn't get a chance to say?
No, I think that people shouldn't be scared about numbers. Numbers are simply the description of who we are, and they're not cold. Numbers are not cold. You can see through the numbers and arrive to people, and you can look at the numbers and then go around and find people, and this is what I like, and I think that humanity is beautiful, but is also in danger in a sense.
Humanity is beautiful, but it's also
in danger.
In danger, okay. Now I'm headed 2 floors up to another department, and we're going to talk numbers with a health economist, and, well, see what people I can find hiding in those numbers.
Hello, I'm Aleksandra Torbica. I'm a professor here in Bocconi University in Milano in the field of health economics and health policy, and I'm also currently the president of the European Health Economics Association.
So one of the things we've been looking at is the aging population here in Italy and across Europe. And as I was chatting with how do you say someone from Milan?
Milanese.
Milanese. And all of them look to old age as something that's going to be an immense expense on healthcare. Is this fear rational?
Partially, I would say. Of course, we are exposed continuously to the narrative that aging of the population is a huge threat to healthcare system. That's not entirely true, because all these estimates and these economic projections are based on the assumptions that longer people live, they will inevitably get sicker, and that loss of health will lead to greater demand for healthcare services, which is partially true, but it's not the same across all the generations. The health status of a 70-year-old or 60-year-old today is much different than a health status of 20 or 30 years before. It's not the fact that we are aging that's creating the demand for healthcare services. It's the health status of the aging population that is creating the demand for health services.
But also, the longer we live, doesn't it increase the chances that we encounter disease or accident?
Yes, the probability rises, but for example, there are evidence that the most of the healthcare expenditure is observed in the long-term care, much less in the acute hospital care, for example, which is the most expensive one. But I would rather think of it in a way that it's true that with increased age, likelihood of getting certain diseases is higher. But it's also true that many of them are preventable to a certain extent. So if you talk about how to make the healthcare systems more sustainable, prevention is a very, very important part of the story. And
Right.
not many people talk about that. Only a very small fraction of healthcare costs are dedicated to prevention. It's always about, trying to manage what is immediate or like midterm. The fact that we live longer, it's a positive thing, but it's how we live longer. What is the quality of life? What is the health status? That's also very important. And prevention can really, really make a difference in that.
When you talk about care for people before they become old as being a great way to keep costs down in the future, that seems like a great way to sort of say we're all in this together. But it seems like it's inevitable that there's a sort of old versus young mentality that it's going to come up.
I do believe that what can be done, especially in some contexts, in really trying to change the narrative from negative, let's say, a notion like they are the burden, to a more positive one as they are the resource. We talk about active aging, we talk about healthy aging, successful aging, silver economy, all these labels that show how, if kept healthy, that's the, health is the necessary condition, is actually a resource for the society. The elderly people are volunteering, some continue to be productive also, let's say, in economic activities or applying their creativity, involvement in the community, feeling empowered to do so. That's another stream of research here that we are doing with our colleagues here in Bocconi, the impact of loneliness on the consumption of healthcare resources, but also health outcomes like mortality and quality of life and so on. Loneliness is a big topic.
Is loneliness expensive to fix? Are we supporting friendship enough?
To be honest, I don't know. But I've seen, also some anecdotal evidence.
I'll take anecdotal,
yeah. Of, friends getting together and creating the community for, their pension or for their elderly ages. So like, all buying houses in the same area. So basically investing in their aging together. It's a great example, great proof how much, again, social interaction is important to the good quality aging. How much policymakers, how much institutions can do about that? Well, creating conditions or incentivizing maybe some of these, for example, efforts that the individuals or groups of individuals put, that would be also very, very, very positive sign. But again, aging is a good thing. It's a great result of the progress, technological progress that we had, education, empowerment, knowledge, also within the healthcare system. It's a positive thing that people are living longer. There are challenges associated with these demographic trends, but we have to recognize that this is an opportunity. Aging well, aging healthy is something that we should strive for in order to be able to decrease this, let's say, pressure that we talk about being a pressure for the healthcare system.
And for an individual.
And for an individual, of course, especially for an individual, aging well and aging healthy allows the individual to live the life to the fullest. So prevention is a key.
For the last few weeks, I've been talking a lot about aging not necessarily as a problem, but as maybe creating problems, or the idea like, how are we going to deal with this? But I think a starting point in terms of reframing it is we've achieved something remarkable.
Exactly.
And, unprecedented and beautiful and
it already changes, right? Already shifts a bit how you perceive it and what can be done about it. But again, it's not only extending life as it is, it's really try to get there as in the best possible shape. Right.
Like, what are we burdened with? Like a longer, richer life full of better health. This is an embarrassment of riches in a way. Yeah. I appreciate you giving me that perspective on it.
You're welcome.
I met researchers with projections stretching 10, 20, 50 years into the future. I also met Paolo, who told me I live for today. Mathematical facts and street corner opinion are both really valuable. Seeing moments where scientific conclusions align with the thoughts of the people that I met was like the most powerful validation of both of those perspectives. We need community and loved ones and a fair chance of being healthy. And I know that's not like a hot take, but it's a foundation from which we can imagine policy and craft messaging and think about how to build resilient societies. I think with a superficial glance, it's easy to get a false sense of old versus young, but the conversations I'm having and the demographic perspective, as Jakob called it in episode 1, keep giving me hope that we can make choices that serve short and long-term needs of society. Remember Valentina, the woman I spoke with at the top of the episode? She gave us a candid, off-the-cuff vision of her future, which honestly sounded a lot like the community aging as described by Aleksandra, the president of the European Health Economics Association. And like this.
I don't know. I also think that we are a generation that still keeps living with other people because we cannot afford a home by ourselves and so on. So maybe our the net around us will be bigger than the one that our parents had, and I will still be living with a roommate or someone that can take care of me, and I can take care of him or her or whatsoever. I don't know. Maybe we will be more connected in this sense. I mean, we share the cars because we have Uber, we share the bicycles, we share the motorbikes. Maybe we will also share this kind of relationship. I wanted to be surrounded by love and people that care about me, honestly. It's the only thing I'm asking. I think it's the important thing at the end of the day and the life is to have someone that cares about you.
I am Daniel Stern, and this has been episode 2 of Certain Futures. This podcast was produced by Radio Speakhoff in cooperation with the EU-funded research project FutureRes towards a resilient future of Europe. You'll find plenty of information and links in our show notes. Please subscribe to the podcast because we have 2 more amazing episodes coming up. I appreciate the time everyone in Milan spent with me. From Valentina and Paolo to Arnie and Letizia and Aleksandra, thank you all very much. Coming up in episode 3, I'm going to dive into fertility and try and figure out how we can make some more babies or why we're not making more babies. If you'd like to do some advanced reading on the topic, I could tell you the title of a great paper, or better yet, we could ask Lainey to put a little Certain Futures melody to it.
Resilience, as a theoretical foundation for fertility dynamics.
Thank you for listening.